Hey folks, it's your pal Mike Shea from Sly Flourish. I'm having a long weekend, basically Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I got bored today. It's already 10:30 and I was bored. I was like, I love doing Twitch shows, just hanging out and talking about D&D and having a chat. And there's nothing I seem to enjoy more than the sound of my own voice. So I thought I would do a Twitch chat today, and we would just talk about general D&D stuff. No big topics. I do have a list of topics because I don't want to bore people to death. But no big central topic today. Just a good time. Good time. Good coffee with my dog mug that I stole from my wife. I have 3 different kinds of coffee sitting on my desk right now. I'm loaded up with coffee today. Yeah. So I made a list of things to chat about. This show, I'll do my little pitch. This show, like all the Sly Flourish shows, are brought to you by the fine supporters of Sly Flourish on Patreon. If you want to become a supporter of Sly Flourish, you can do so by going to patreon.com/SlyFlourish and help support shows like this and equipment and bandwidth and all the other costs that are associated with keeping Sly Flourish going. I also want to start talking more about the newsletter. So there's a Sly Flourish newsletter. If you go to slyflourish.com/subscribe, I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Let's take a look here. Slyflourish.com/subscribe takes you to a newsletter page. You can put your email address in here and you will get weekly emails with the latest Sly Flourish article. So it's a easier, faster way to get every Sly Flourish article sent directly to your inbox. You will also get announcements of new big Sly Flourish projects. So that is a good way. That's a good way to kind of, if you're interested in the stuff I'm doing, that's probably the best way. That and Patreon are probably the best way to do it. And Discord, and here, and YouTube, and Twitter. I'm doing a lot of things. I try to keep the Patreon newsletter is like the hub of all of it. So like you'll get links every month to all of the articles and all of the videos that I've produced and anything new and cool that I've produced. I try to make it so that the people who are directly supporting Sly Flourish every month get the easiest access to all of the stuff that I'm making without having to go hunt around for it. And then they can ignore it if they don't want that stuff. So I try to do that pretty regularly. I do that once every month, usually beginning of the month. First Friday of the month, usually. So I got one next month. Yeah, so check out the newsletter. Yeah, so I thought today we'd talk about lots of different things. I got lots of topics to talk about. I don't know if we want to talk about all those. If you're in chat today, I don't think there's a whole bunch of you, but feel free to mention which ones of these, 10 things. 1, 2, 3, it looks like 10 things. Which one of these 10 things you are actually interested in hearing about, and I'm happy to talk about it. And then I'll also ignore and talk about things I want to talk about. There's some things on here that I really don't have a lot to say. It's like further Tasha's thoughts. I don't really have more thoughts on Tasha's than I gave last week. It's cool. I want to see it in operation. There is one little thing I was talking to my friend Chris about it today, that they, and I guess there's been talk about this on other shows. I think it was on Dragon Talk or something like that. They talked about a new bit of what they refer to as tech, a new sort of mechanic, which is tying limited options to proficiency bonuses instead of attribute bonuses. And the advantage there is you know exactly how many you're going to get regardless of whether a character has been boosting their primary attribute or not. So an example is the sword, or the blade singer can blade sing a number of times equal to their proficiency bonus, which means you know exactly how many times in a day they're going to be able to do that, regardless of where they put their ASI, and their ability score increases. So it means it scales with level. So I thought that's kind of interesting. I don't know how that, is that a big deal? I don't know. I don't think it's a particularly big deal, but it's kind of interesting. I don't really have any other Tasha's thoughts. I did post a tweet. Pointcrawls, Rex Verdi says, Pointcrawls, the hard parts, cool stuff that happened in your game. The things you're calling which are the hard parts? Oh, the hard parts of 5e. Yeah. Sure. I did post a tweet earlier today asking about what things you wish were in Tasha's that weren't there, and I got some interesting responses. I'm asking not for altruistic reasons. I'm asking for very specific reasons, which some of you can imagine. So I got some interesting thoughts back there. Some things that I think I can do, and then some things I'm like, I'm not sure if that's for me. So but I want to try to get an idea of the kinds of things people wish were in there, and then pick up some ideas. Pointcrawls. let's talk about point crawls. Point crawls are something that I have been spending a lot of time studying and researching recently. I have a whole list of articles that I've been kind of digging through. Let's see if I can find these. This would be under my, is it under draft still? Or did I promote it to articles ready for edits? I think I promoted it. I don't see here. Path for DM expertise, running wars. Dark vision isn't as good as you think. Where is my article? Let's go back to drafts. Wow, did I lose this article? Man, that would totally suck. But I can't find it. I can't have deleted it. I certainly didn't delete it. Counterspell, running session zeros, DM reading, screwing with your players, randomly. This is not, is this in order? This is in order. Oh, you know why? I'm sure that my iCloud drive is not up to date. That's what's happening here. So let me, I don't know why iCloud drive, I use iCloud drive to try to sync, and it does not sync particularly well. I think it needs updating regularly. It needs updating regularly. When it's not updated, it won't sync, and it doesn't tell you that it's not syncing. So you're like, where are my articles? Oh, they're still there. They're just not visible. So yeah, I did a bunch of research into point crawls. Point crawls is sort of an old school idea, I think. Let's go here. Beep. Point crawls, yay. How do I, no, I can mail. This is such a hassle. Mail this article to myself. This is exciting. This is why you came here today. I'm doing it because I want to show the articles that I was reading, and I need to get the article where I stashed them all. Oh, I should also post that I'm live on Twitch. Hang on a sec. I am live on Twitch talking about D&D. Come join me. Bang. And then we put an image of the document, iCloud Drive. This one I know is there because I've seen it there before. Documents. And we will do the Enclave Square where it's two people chatting. Cool. Yeah, let's go find that. There we go. And we will download it, and we will open it, and we will find a markdown renderer. I don't have a markdown renderer on my PC. So let's find a web-based markdown to HTML, and we will convert it. And give me the raw HTML. And this is so convoluted. Desktop. Article.html. And we minimize that. And we will, let's see. Let me bring up a new window here. Punk. There we go. So this is my draft article. You get to see a draft article today. You probably can't read it. Bang, bang, bang. This is my draft article on point crawls. So it is not ready yet. Something happened here. I didn't want to have happen. Yeah, there we go. And there were a whole bunch of articles, I guess. Yeah, here's the further reading is where I went bananas about point crawls. So I'm still new to all this. This is why I like the articles in draft, and I need to do more research because, like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I just say stuff, and I don't know what I'm talking about. So I need to really understand it. There's people who've been spending a lot of time on this topic, and luckily I've got some friends of mine in my Discord chat who have been spending time on this, so I can kind of learn from them and try things out and be like, how's this work? So the idea behind point crawls sort of comes from an evolution of hex crawling, and there's a whole bunch of articles here about it. Alexandrian, Justin Alexander has written a lot about hex crawls, and the general idea is that every hex. In fact, if you read the Dungeon Master's Guide, if you look in the first, I think it's like in the first chapter of the Dungeon Master's Guide. It talks about using hexes for distances. And let's all get our copies of the, oh God, I just banged the mic. Dungeon Master's Guide, and take a look at what it has to say on mapping. Kingdom scale. So that's continent scale. So it's got different scales. Mapping your campaign. There's a whole chapter. This is on page 14. A whole section on mapping out your campaign, and talks about using hex paper with 5 hexes to the inch. And then it has different scales. And so province scale is very detailed, and every hex is 1 mile. And so you can essentially cover that in a short amount of time. Minutes, right? That's minute scale. Kingdom scale is every hex representing 6 miles. And then continent scale is every hex doing 60 miles. So that's kind of interesting. Continent scale is probably bigger than I typically want to do. So I think the kingdom scale, if you're thinking about doing like a section of forest, or you're thinking about doing like a city, a pretty big city, kind of a big area, because I think like how many hexes can you cover in a day is under, there's some other section that I'd have to go look up about travel speed, which is probably important. So the idea is like you essentially write out your whole area that you want to do. Kingdom scale is probably the right scale, I think, you probably want to use most. And you put something in there. Is it, you put an environment. Is it a forest? Is it grassland? Is it hills? Is it mountains? Is it desert? Whatever. And then you might put a thing in there, like there's an old ruin in there, or there's a old archway, strange ancient fayish archway, or some other kind of monument. And then you go through the process, very old school method of you go through the process of having the characters move from hex to hex, and you kind of roll for encounters, and you talk about weather, and you talk about provisions, and you talk about, checking for things, persuasion and survival checks and all that sort of stuff. And if you've played Tomb of Annihilation has this kind of built into it. And I thought that was a pretty good idea. Some people just hate it, right? And that's fine. You don't have to do it. But I thought it was neat that the 5th edition designers said, let's do a hex crawl in a modern adventure. So they took Tomb of Annihilation and they made it a hex crawl. And I ran it that way until, a lot of people said, did you run it that way? And I said, I ran it till I stopped, right? I ran it until it was kind of boring and really didn't have much of a factor. And then we sort of would, move our finger forward and be like, we'll just go through a few hexes at a time. So that's sort of one way to do it. So the point crawl, as far as I understand it, and people in chat, if you are listening to this and you're like, man, he's baked, he doesn't know what he's talking about, please correct me. I am all for being corrected on stuff I don't understand. And this is a topic I do not really understand particularly well. So the idea behind a point crawl is you connect important places together. You don't worry about the hex-sized distances. You probably still worry about distances, but you're not worried too much about distances. It's more abstract. And as you know, I like abstract things. So I gravitated towards this. And the idea is that you have notable locations connected by natural connections. And so a notable location is, and I have this example, right? And hopefully you can like read these locations and get, and your mind kind of comes up with something. These mean specific things to me, but maybe they mean something different to you, and that's cool, right? This is actually meant to be a city. This is a point crawl in the city of making for my campaign, and it's not a great one. This is really the problem with this one is it's not great, and I'll get into why it's not great in a minute. So you have important landmarks or locations, right? And it could be like Weathertop, it could be the town of Bree. It could be the barge, or the what is it called? When all the hobbits run and they get on the boat and they go across the river, there's a name for that thing. So there's major landmarks, and then there's connections between the landmarks. Buckleberry Ferry. Thank you. Mishwan N says Buckleberry Ferry. Thank you. So, those are landmarks, right? And between the landmarks, you have sort of things that connect them. And those things might be roads or paths or game trails or rivers or open land, like open plains. There are ways to get from point A to point B in a point crawl that are natural to the world around them. And that creates these connections between locations. So your point crawl is really, locations and natural, landmarks and natural connections between the landmarks. And sometimes those natural connections are one way. So you might have a point crawl where you can get to, do I have another one up here? Yeah. Here's another one. And this is another bad one, and I'll get into why. But let's pretend for a minute that you started at Karshak Station, and you have sort of three ways you can go. You can go to Obsidian Spires, the Plains of Glass, or the Road of Fallen Iron. And if you go to the Obsidian Spires, traveling through the Obsidian Spires, you might reach Skycaller's Wreck. But you could think that Skycaller's Wreck is actually better as a offshoot of the Obsidian Spires. And you can really go from the Obsidian Spires to the Altar of Valara, or to Skycaller's Wreck. So, there's a different way that this point crawl could go, because this one's too linear. Like, even though it's 3 paths, it's still really linear. And I have a reason for it being linear like this, which is that I wanted to have essentially 4 locations between Karshak and the Gates of Making, regardless of which path they took, because I wanted it to last 1 session. I didn't want to take a lot of time with it. So it was instead of creating a much more open exploration environment. The problem with an open exploration environment is you really don't know how long it's going to take, right? It could take weeks. And I just don't want the characters to spend weeks going through the Glass Plateau. I really wanted it to be like 1 session. And if it's 1 session long, about 4 locations is about right. And that would be Obsidian Spire. And Obsidian Spires is really all of it. So, yeah. So I think that's the idea behind point crawls is you design, this is something I ran into because it was a problem that I was having specifically with the Glass Plateau, this one area of Eberron that I'm running. And I was like, well, what's in the Glass Plateau? And when they get there, what choices are available to them? And how do they, I know that they want to go from the Glass Plateau to the Gates of Making. I know that I want to show them things that occur there and that show them what the Glass Plateau is like. I also want to give them meaningful choices. So I don't want this linear path of here's 4 different places you go. You can do it, but it's not the most fun. So I wanted to have options, and I wanted to have different things that they could see, but I also wanted to fix it to a limited amount of time. This is not a decision tree. Ran Rooster says, "I'm sorry I'm late, but what are we looking at? This you're looking at a point crawl. This is the layout of a location." An abstract location, which the characters begin at Karshak Station, then they have choices about which direction they're going across the gate. So you can think of it like a map without the map, right? That they travel through these places, and at each one of these places they have an interesting location that they run into and probably some kind of encounter. And the encounter could be a combat encounter, but it also could be running into a person. I had one group that actually went through this. They went to Karshak Station, they went to the Plains of Glass, they went to the Mirrors, they had an encounter at the Mirrors. They went to the Shattered Gate where they met an orc druid lich, a former member of the Gatekeepers, the ancient order of orc druids who kept the realm of Zoriat at bay. And there was a lich there who was at a shattered gateway trying to keep the thing from opening. And he said, by the way, there's gates all over this place and they're shattering. And then they made it to the armies of glass where they've faced these creatures called collectors who are collecting the souls of dead soldiers who are encased in glass because of whatever the hell happened in Making. And that's where our adventure ended. So they went right down that line and it was fine, right? That worked fine. And it got me where I wanted to go, which is basically 1 session spent at the Glass Plateau. So that was a way to work with it. So there's lots of articles. The 2 groups that seem to talk about it the most were the Hill Cantons blog, which has a whole bunch of articles that go back to 2012. So these are 8-year-old articles about doing hex crawling. And think about it, 2012, there was no 5th edition. So this stuff is pre-5th edition. But it clearly, I forget the name of the author. I guess I can find out. Crawling without, let's go to... Because I think there was one of these where it had a whole hex crawl sort of wrap up. And then another name for this thing is sort of this idea of path crawl. And I think path crawl is the idea that you're following natural paths. So I fell into this because it feels like a really good tool for handling overland exploration in sort of a lazy way, right? It fits my, I like to write 10 things down. And then it's well, how do you connect the 10 things? And I also, I'm kind of proficient in the idea of network networks with nodes and edges and connections between those. And so this hits that part of my brain too. So it really works. But Alexandrian and Hill Canton's blogs both talk a lot about it. And I'm going to have an article about this. So, if you're interested in more, I suppose I could probably copy and paste this into Twitch. So there's a bunch of articles if you want to read about it. Paste it into Twitch. So that's Pointcrawls. I've got an article about this. Let's do a quick run through the article and just see what's going on here. And the article I'm still working on. Oh yeah, so why does they suck? It sucks because it doesn't follow the ideas of Janelle Jaquay when you think about dungeons, which is when you're, and this is something that again, an article from Alexandrian talks about Jaquaying the dungeon, and the idea is that when you're building a map, you have specific ways you want maps to go. So yeah, Alexandrian has like as Justin Alexander does, has many articles that talk about this idea. It's like there's a bunch of ways you want to design your. I'm going to say dungeon, but the truth is it also works for Pointcrawls. You want loop backs. You want different ways to get from point A to point B. You want dead ends. You want, and if you think about it, like if you look at maps that Dyson does, Dyson logo maps fit this strategy a lot. Let's take a look at Dyson logo maps. They're not linear. They don't have just one path. There's not one stairwell. That's probably an extreme example. Let's pick one of his. So like, here's a great big one. Lots of different, this is a great map, man. So lots of different paths, things that go on top of over them. Garrow with no name says, I'm a completist. I hate missing parts of a dungeon or storyline. Yeah, you're hosed, because in D&D, a lot of stuff isn't made, right? So yeah, like you're not going to search every room on this. But I've had players who are like, let's search every room, and that's fine. I did a big dam, and they did. So you probably don't want to drop a map like this in front of people. Look at that. There's like, is that a maw? That looks like a big mouth down there. That's sweet. Oh, this map I want to run a D&D game using this map. But you can see, like, let's see if I can. Oh, come on. What is going on? This map is so big that my browser's breaking up. There we go. So you can see there's like lots of loop backs, different ways to get, like, let's assume you're coming from the south here. If you assume you're coming from the south here, multiple paths in, loop backs, like you'll come back and you'll hey, we're at the beginning again. You kind of think about it. I'll tell you what really, like the game that really knocked my socks off with this, and it knocked everyone's socks off with this, is Dark Souls. The original Dark Souls game has a very three-dimensional map. The whole game takes place on a single interconnected map, and you get further and further along and then find these shortcuts that take you back to the original spot again. And it's really awesome. And you can think of these maps that way, that like you as you travel through, there's loopbacks, there's dead ends, there's things over the top of one another. There's, I wish that there was a good list, a simple list of these are the things you want to sort of check off when you design a thing. But all these ideas of like loopbacks and dead ends and asymmetric design fit your point crawls too. That you want your point crawl, and that's why this one sucks. It's like, there's loopbacks kind of, but not really. Like these would be better interconnected. This one's a little bit better, except it doesn't have any real dead ends, right? And it's basically just almost everything is connected to everything else, and that's not really useful. Again, I designed it that way because I wanted it to be sort of fixed session, but I think I need to go back and redo this one. I probably won't, this one's kind of done. Although I might do it for my other group. We'll see. I think there's other ways of designing this that have sort of that more Jaquay style of loops, loopbacks and dead ends. People in chat, if you are smarter on the idea of Jaquaying a dungeon than I am, what would you consider to be, if you were going to list out the criteria that identifies a Jaquay style dungeon? I would love to know. Yeah, Ran Rooster says that's why I always do 5-room dungeon. My players have fun, and I don't have to plan as much. Yeah, sure. I mean, what works, and I'll tell you the idea of the 5-room dungeon is a model. I don't begrudge models because they make our lives easier. It's not my style, and I'll tell you. I mean, I'm a lazy dude, right? Like, I'm not quite a professional lazy dude. I still have a day job, but I'm pretty close. And this stuff is not hard. And I'll tell you, like I wrote an article about this. Like I think I wrote this last week, a couple weeks ago. Building lazy dungeons, right? So this is a little different than a 5-room design. But the idea here's another like good example of like you can see like here you've got dead ends and loopbacks, a lot of loops, right? And then some dead ends. Almost everything in here is connected, but it's kind of a cool way. And it's funny that I did a thing on lazy dungeons, and yet I didn't annotate a traditional dungeon room. I really ought to put another one in here. But my idea is you go to Dice and Logos because he's got 1,000 maps. You pick a map you like. Let's just say you just want the Sanctuary of the Magi, right? And you just say like, this is fine. This is not the most Jaquay, too symmetrical, not a lot of dead ends. I wouldn't consider this to be an ideal version of a Jaquay style dungeon, but it may suit your need. And what I like to do is I will grab the image, and I use a Mac primarily, and I will paste this image or open it up in preview, and I'll annotate it, and I'll just write names down. I think I've got, so I did one for my wife. For our one-on-one game. Let me pull this up. So in our AQ Expeditions is the game that I play with my wife, my one-on-one game, and I just created a new location, Laboratory of Tyrannus. Open up the page, and here let's go to the original. Here is an example where I took a map that we were going to use. So in my wife's game, she found a stairwell and a locked door in the manor that she bought. And the door had this crazy arcane lock on it. And she just got the key after completing this other quest. She got a key to it. And she's going to open up and find out that there's a whole laboratory under here that an old artificer made back during the time of the last war. And the primary thing about the laboratory is that it has a gatekeeper's gateway in it that she can use to basically go anywhere in Eberron if she has the right key. And then most of the campaign will be her getting new keys and opening up new areas and going to different places. There's one key that's already in here that she can use, and then that opens up to like 3 more. And then she has these different places that she can go. So what I did is I just took the map and I wrote names on it, right? Broken Summoning Circle, Sunken Vault of the Artifacts, Monoliths of the Gatekeepers, Chamber of Monoliths. A lot of monoliths, right? Vault of Memories, Scrying Mirror, Artificer's Laboratory. So lots of different things that you would expect. And a Broken Cells. One of the things is that there's a night hag who's loose in here, and the night hag is doing like nightmarish things. So there's villains and nightmares that have invaded this place, and that she has to clear out eventually. And I think it'll be sessions before she deals with that. So that was my lazy map, right? And what is that? 9-ish places, 10-ish again, sort of 10-ish locations that I filled out. I just give them an evocative name, and then I go through the rest of the lazy DM steps. But what I have is now a map that's bigger than 5 rooms. It's not a series. She can explore different paths and see different things and explore it over time. And I can improvise what she finds there based on the name and based on the other secrets that I've got for the campaign. And that works for me. Like that means I can build out a bigger map without a lot of work. I don't have to prepare every room. I don't say like, what's in the monoliths of the gatekeepers? It's like, well, I know there are monoliths there. I know who the gatekeepers are. I've got some secrets. I will improvise, right? I'll figure them out. So that's my sort of trick. Again, not bashing 5-room dungeons. The only problem with 5-room dungeons, they start to feel the same, although you can kind of vary them up. So I don't know. It's a good framework and people dig it. And I'm not begrudging anybody having a method that works for them. So Rex Verdi gave me a list of Jaquaying the dungeon, multiple entrances, 2 paths through, loops, level connections, secret paths, divided levels, and nested dungeons. I don't understand nested dungeons. If you could fill that one out. I think I got all the rest of them. Multiple entrances, check. 2 paths through, check. Loops, check. Level connections, sometimes. Secret paths, yeah. I tried to like put a secret path in everything. I'll tell you where I got started with Jaquaying dungeons was with Grendelroot. When I was doing Ruins of the Grendelroot. Let's see if I can pull up a map from there. Documents, runes, the Grendel roots, maps. Where's the Grendel root art and map pack? Art and maps. So for every one of these maps, I'll just pick one at random. I tried to have multiple entrances. I don't know if I succeeded with this one. I think there's just the one entrance here. No, there were two. So you could come in by river, you could come in by road, but you end up in this central room first. But this one has secret areas, like this area over here on the left. It's got multiple loops, multiple ways through. It's got some kind of dead end areas, a little bit. And these were smaller. So this is closer to your 5-room idea. Because I kept these relatively, this one doesn't count because that's very small. Here, multiple entrances. You can come in from the south over this big crater. You can come in by the elevator on the east. Here, there were dead ends. It's really a big open area, so there's not a lot of looping, but there were multiple paths through, and there's sort of a big open city area, right? So this one was Jaquayed up a little bit. There are secret areas, but I think the secret areas are actually inside these places. So yeah, that was more of an open one. This one had kind of multiple paths. You come in from one corridor, so it's not multiple entrances, but there were paths on the left and right, and it sort of is this figure 8, sort of idea. You'll definitely hit the central area, but then you'll multiple paths. Again, secret over here on the right. So everything had a secret. Everything usually had multiple paths through. Many of them had multiple entrances. So I think that for small dungeons, they were Jaquayed a bit. This one, again, multiple entrances in the main area. No multiple loops, a couple dead ends. That certainly doesn't check all the boxes. Same here. This one had multiple entrances. You can come in from the top and drop down here, or come in from the side. So this had, there were kind of different ones. So I think I'd probably give myself a C. I'll be nice to myself and give myself a B. It's too late now. Nested equals find an entrance to a second dungeon within the first, a teleportation pad to a new location, a secret door. Yeah. Well, and that's so the problem, and I think this is where the 5-room dungeon idea kind of comes in, is that when you if you have a lot of stuff like that, a lot of loopbacks, a lot of nested dungeons, a lot of different things, you don't know how long it's going to take them to get through. You have no idea about timing, right? And one of the things I did with Grendelroot, which may have been a mistake, is I worried a lot about timing. I wanted to make sure you could get the adventures done in 2 to 4 hours. I don't know if that is as important as it should have been. I think I overweighted how valuable that was, and it might have been better to have bigger. One thing I regret a little bit is that the maps could have been bigger with more places in them and shorter descriptions. It's one thing I think if I were doing a new version of that book, I would do it more in the style of Dragon of Icespire Peak, with locations with more rooms and shorter descriptions, so that there's lots of places to go. What else? Yeah, so that's Pointcrawls. So getting back to the idea of Pointcrawls, I think you can take a lot of the concepts that you do for a Jaquayed dungeon and apply it to Pointcrawls, and that's something I'm still learning. Right? This is, and I love that I have new things to learn. Get rid of those. So I think we've beat that topic to death. Was that an hour? How long have I been going? 30 minutes on that topic. All right, let's, not that we're on any kind of schedule. I can talk as long as I want. Let's go back to my notes, Mike Zettelcast in, and click in here, open a new page. For fun, make these all. How do I make these all checks? Turn into to-do list, Pointcrawls, bang! Hard parts of 5e. The hard parts. Oh, yeah. So this is a bit of a concept on. This is something I'm thinking a lot about. This kind of gets into thoughts on Tasha's. So we're gonna eliminate thoughts on Tasha's. What did I just do? Oh, console. Slash what's missing from Tasha's. So this is something I think a lot about. So one of the things that I have up on my Patreon are these Sly Flourish's Uncovered Secrets. And Uncovered Secrets are, let's see, I'll pull them up. They are one-page guidelines to help make running 5e easier. My goal is to help you get the things out of the way. Did that bring up in the right one? I think it did. Things to help get parts of it out of the way and help you tell your stories, help you share stories at the table. So it's things to help you improvise. It's things to help streamline and speed parts up. And right now, I've got about 3, but I've got plenty in the works. And I offered up, these are sort of extensions of what you'd find in the Lazy DM workbook. So I have the Lazy DM workbook, and it's got things like in random monster dungeon tables. It's got a lot of stuff in here, including some like one-page guidelines to sort of make things a little bit easier. And I wanted to expand that idea. I wanted to, look at like, what are the tricky bits? What are the, where can things be expanded easily? And where can things be expanded easily? And where can things be simplified to help focus our story? So I started off with hordes because I think a lot of people believe that 5th edition doesn't really work well when you get over a certain amount of monsters. Let's say 12, right? They think like if you get to 20 and 30 and 50 and 100 and 1,000 monsters, the game becomes untenable. And I'm like, I think there's a way to do this. And I think that there's, if how would you run 1,000 skeletons against a 20th level group of characters, right? And that's sort of the extreme end. But I wanted to essentially say like there's no limit to the number of monsters you can run. And this system, so I wrote one, right? And you probably, if you see my stuff at all, you probably have the idea. But it's essentially like, how do you handle damage to a group like that? How do you determine attacks and saving throws? Like who succeeds, right? And so I have some very simple tricks, like one quarter. Assume 1/4 succeed, or turn that dial down depending on the circumstances. So if the characters are like filled with like shield and everything else, or they have disadvantage or advantage, you can move that dial up and down. But start with 1/4 of them succeed and then increase it or decrease it. Determine your targets randomly. Adjust area of effect. How many if you throw a area of effect on a horde, how many can you affect to do it? I've got a little breakdown here of how big an area is and how many will get caught in a horde. You should assume that a fireball hit at least 16, but circumstances always change things, so you should always be able to say maybe 32. So Dragoneer says, I've learned to do all of that over 35 years of DMing. It's very likely useful for new DMs. Which parts have you found useful? And then a new thing, zone-based combat, right? So this is kind of an extended idea of theater of the mind combat. This is taken from games like, mostly from Fate. Fate Core does this. And I tried to add in some other ways to kind of do zone-based combat so that it can work with a map and minis. It can work with a hand-drawn map. It can work with 3x5 cards. It can work with just pure theater of the mind. It works well in text and Discord. So it's like, you don't want to have a, do you need to have a grid for every battle? And the answer is no, you don't. And I'd argue you really, and I don't want to say you should or shouldn't. I say keep all of the tools in your toolbox to tell the stories that are going on, including theater of the mind and including gridded combat, depending on what you want. So these are areas where I think, and then building lazy encounters, you probably heard me talk about this too. Very simple equation that you can keep in your head. I promote this like crazy, and someday either one of two things are going to happen. One, I'm going to finally recognize that it doesn't make any sense to anybody, or that they don't need it. Or everyone's going to suddenly realize that this is the best thing ever. I think it's the best thing ever. Or not the best thing ever, but pretty close. Which is if you want to, build your combat based on the circumstances, right? If you are, hey, we got a bunch of characters, they're 17th level, they're traveling through Thanatos, the layer of the abyss that belongs to Orcus. They go to the top of a hill, they're fighting some, powerful wights, and they cast Turn Undead. And the Turn Undead, the wave of Turn Undead roaring, radiant energy radiates out, and all around you, you look around and ghouls all turn and look, and hundreds of ghouls are pouring up towards you at the top of this hill. Hundreds of them, right? That's the story. And then you're like, how many ghouls would be deadly for a group of 17th level characters, right? This is where you start with the story. What makes sense? Hundreds of ghouls. Let's say you've got a bunch of like sword wraiths, like sword wraith champions, right? Big, powerful sword wraith champion. You got 6 of them. And then you've got hundreds of ghouls. You're like, how many ghouls do I want to throw at them at once before I think it's going to be deadly? This is kind of a tricky one because ghouls are CR1. The answer is an encounter is probably deadly. It's certainly edged into deadly not really deadly, but at least mathematically deadly, if the sum total of monster challenge ratings is greater than half the sum total of character levels, or 1/4 if they're below 5th level. In this case, 17th level. So let's say you have 5 17th level characters, 5 times 17. Math is hard. That's 75 plus, I can't do it in my head. I suck. 5 times 17 is 85 divided by 2 is 42. So 43 ghouls at once is on the edge of deadly. But I bet 17th level, and they're going to throw fireballs and everything else, you could probably throw 100, right? You could have 100 ghouls attack them. But I know what the deadly threshold is. And the idea of building lazy encounters is just keep the threshold in mind, right? That you sort of, you sort of draw a line and say, how many total challenge ratings is on the edge of or is over deadly. This math, by the way, is slightly harder than the rule about less than 5 is it's 1/4 instead of a half. So let's pretend they're you have 5 4th level characters. This is math I can do. 5 4th level characters, the total characters is 20. Half, you want to do 1/4. So that's 5, which means you have any amount of creatures where the CR is 5 or above is likely deadly, which would be 3 ogres would probably be deadly. 6 ghouls is on the edge of deadly, right? That'd be pretty hard for 4th level characters. So it's 1/4. And the reason why is 5th level, things really change. Characters get multiple attacks. Fireball is in the way. 5th level is really a big jumping point in power for characters. I argue there's also another big jump in power at 11th level and another at 16th or 17th level. And so you could probably increase it even more in those levels. But, we'll keep things simple because it gets so goofy in those high levels anyway. So the nice thing is I can do that. I have to use a calculator to figure out total levels, but I can keep that threshold in mind and it works. These to me are hard parts. Like encounter building is a hard part of 5th edition, I think. Running Theater of the Mind is a hard part of running 5th edition. So then the question of what are the other hard parts, right? And what are the other hard parts? And then I'll tag that into what are the other things that that as a dungeon master, you would have liked to, what are the other things as a dungeon master you would have liked Tasha's to include that it did not? And it's because I want to make more of these, right? And a bunch of people had ideas, better traps, but I already have a trap generator in the Lazy DM workbook. I don't think I want to hit traps again. Somebody had a good idea of weird stuff you'd find in a wizard's pocket. I think that's cool. Random tables are cool. I have sort of a bunch of random tables in the workbook. So anything that I've already done in the workbook, I'm obviously, unless I feel like it needs an update, like Theater of the Mind guidelines or encounter building or hordes, 3 big things that are in the workbook that I want to redo. I don't think I need much more. Ran Rooster says, does that quick math work well for non-optimized parties? So keep in mind all of the encounter building guidelines that you find anywhere, whether you're using Kobold Fight Club or the Encounter Builder in D&D Beyond or the rules in the Dungeon Master's Guide or the rules in Xanathar's Guide or my original rules in the Lazy DM workbook or these new ones. They're all loose. They're not great. And that's because different combinations of players and characters and classes and abilities and magic items and all sorts of things are going to have a big effect. Circumstances, how many rests they've had, whether they've been, is this the last fight in the day or the first fight in the day? All of these things change the equation so much that you cannot really get a firm grip on it. Better is to just have a loose guideline. Just give me something, right? Some idea of how many ghouls is deadly. 42, 43 ghouls? Okay, that's supposed to be deadly? Yeah, but I know that they're at the top of their game. 43 ghouls is deadly if you're out of spells and you're already turned undead twice and you're out of stuff and they're pouring up the hill. That could be deadly. But if you're fresh and you're at the top and you've got plenty of spells left, 43 ghouls you're going to eat through in no time at level 17. So there's so many other variants that there's no good equation. You just have to wing it. So that's why mine is as simple as it is because it's already not accurate anyway. Since it's already not accurate, let's make it easy, right? And let's just have a rough gauge, right? And then around here. And that's why, that's why having all the tools, Yeah, I picked the wrong time to run out of holy water. Stop sniffing glue. So, yeah, this is where you really want to have just a general gauge, because no gauge is accurate. There is no accurate gauge for encounter building, because there's too many variables and too much circumstances that matter. So I have lots of ideas. What are the other? So yeah, I've been pondering this idea about what are the hard parts. I'm curious what you folks in the stream have to say. What do you consider to be the sticky bits of 5th edition? The things you wish Tasha's had that it didn't, that you think would help you DM. That's something that's always on my mind, and it's particularly on my mind why I'm working on stuff like this. I've got lots of ideas. I've got lots of things that I'm working on. Dungeon crawl mechanics, I got you covered. I got a thing for that. I'll preview it. All of this stuff, by the way, I mentioned before, is available to the patrons of Sly Flourish if you want. Every month I put out more of these for patron backers, and there's 2 types. There's what you just saw. Let's see, drive, documents, and dungeon crawl mechanics, dungeons deep. So kind of my idea here. So these are called what are they called? Adventure generators. And an adventure generator is a list. It's a focused set of random tables to help you build an adventure around a particular theme. And I just created one yesterday for one called Aliens, for example. That's based on the movie Aliens. And it was like 6 tables. And I tested it with my wife, and she loved it. So I'm like, wow, she really falls for something like that. That means it's good. So this is one that I did for just general dungeon delving, right? And it's high level dungeon delving. So it's not room by room, but it's like, so what are the quests, right? And there's 1 to 20 quests: recover, return an artifact, recover a secret, lay a spirit to rest, find multiple artifacts, sort of different general quests. Then there's monuments for particular rooms that you might run into: cyclopean statues, faceted prisms, arcane circles. These are things that you'd find inside of a dungeon. Discoveries are the upward beats. Things that you would find that are useful. Monsters are the types of monsters you might run into in a particular dungeon. Traps and hazards are just general traps that you might run into. And treasure are things that you may recover. So this is like, do you remember the dungeon board game? This is like the random tables to help you build like the equivalent of the dungeon board game. But you can imagine that you could build an adventure with something like this and a map like we picked from, I think I got rid of them all. A Dyson map, and you could fill it out, right? And you could have sort of interesting things that happen here. So that's, that's an example of like dungeon crawl rules. I mean, they're not really rules. This is more like ways to help you generate a dungeon crawl. I don't think I have the alien. I think once again, it doesn't look like my iCloud drive has updated since the 16th. I wonder why. I think it needs to be updated. Probably something's goofy with the iCloud drive, and it's not updating my thing, because I have the aliens one in here, and I'd love to show that one off. Whatever. So those are ideas. Shadow the Demon Lord reminded me that we're better at adding than subtracting, so it takes players. Ask players to track their damage taken. Yeah, I think you should track damage taken, and I do that for monsters. I track damage taken. That's a good thought, like a general tip. RP prompts for players during travel. I don't always want to run combat encounter every time. Yes. So one of the ones that I want to do here, I did this one for Dungeons Deep. I want to do another one for Wilderness. And I want to do one for cities, I think, where, there's sort of like different, essentially just one page of like things that you could have happen inside of a city. There's lots of really good ones for a city already, though. I don't know if I want to recreate the city one, because like if you do the Waterdeep City Encounters one, Waterdeep City Encounters is a great book of city-based encounters. I highly recommend it for cities. But I think, I might do one anyway, because, it's not like there can't be more. And it will be nice and complete. The idea of having that sort of in hand in this packet, I think would be good. What else? So let's I don't know. The hard parts of 5e. I don't really have much more to say, and I'm still thinking about. I mean, the problem I don't have any other thoughts about Tasha's because I want to see it and play more. I will tell you, I love the environmental effects in Tasha's. I use those. I've been using them regularly, and I love them already. What else do we want to talk about? How about we'll skip over. Move this down. Random factions for game inspiration. That's the fun one to talk about. Cool stuff that happened in my game. Yeah. No one wants to hear about my game. This one looks good. Let's move this one up too. So we'll quick Fantastic Lairs update. For those of you who supported Fantastic Lairs on Kickstarter, I cannot thank you enough. James and Scott and I we just love this project that we've been working on. By the way, that artwork down there is from Fantastic Lairs. That is the Ancient Gold Dragon Archmage. Fiendish Ancient Gold Dragon Archmage in the adventure called Hell's Heart. He is badass. I wanted to make a single monster that could defeat a 20th level group. And I think I did it because he's really hard. 1,000 hit points. So where are we? Things are great. Probably the only area where we are behind is playtesting. And that's not unheard of. So we'll go to our Fantastic Lairs folder here. And we will go to playtests. And we will look at the playtest report count. So this is all. So the good news is all of the lairs are in either playtesting or they've been through playtesting and are now in editing and layout, which is great. We have all of the art and all of the maps for all of them except one, and that one is the one we just recently finished. So we don't. It's not behind. We are going to have everything, and I'll go through. I'll show you some of the art because it's really great. And a lot of these, even the ones that are still in playtesting, we've started doing like the second round of edits. So we're already making changes to them, and we can continue to make changes. So even though what we're doing is we're not waiting for the playtest to be done. We want to make sure that like there's no bottleneck anywhere, right? We want to make sure that everything is moving smoothly through the process, and we're good on that count. They are either in editing or layout, or they're in playtesting, and then we're still. So like I've already sent in changes for Blood Rain and for World Eater. Curse of Black Ice, and Hell's Heart are the other two. And then James, so those are mine, and then James has his, and James has been working on his too. So we're good. It's going to be tight, I think, getting it out before the end of the year, but I think we'll be able to. The PDF anyway, the print version, we're not going to be able to get out this year. I can tell you that because print version takes so long to go through the layout process, and we want the PDF in people's hands and to look at it and try it. And that way, any embarrassing stuff we find, we can fix before people start paying for print copies. Lair of Lord Whiskers is going to be, it's not a cat-based adventure, I'm afraid. It is a adventure about were-rats. So they look really great. What else? Is there any other news? All the maps are done except for one. All the art is done except for one. They all look great. Playtests, so we've got 8 in playtesting, I think. Yeah, there's 8 in playtesting. And a couple of them, we got like 4. We want to get 5 playtests before we call it done. But if we only get 4, we only get 4. And the high-level stuff has just been a lot harder to get feedback on than the low-level stuff. It takes longer to run them. People have to make big, powerful characters. So the low-level stuff, it was much easier for people to fit it into their regular sessions and get us feedback than the high-level stuff. So we're dealing with that. So let's look at some art. Final art and maps. I'll go to art and click it. So here I'm going to zip through all of the artwork. I don't remember all the artist names, so I'm not going to be able to cite all the artist names. But so that is for James's adventure. Ashnarl, the Marilith. Oh, I love that Marilith picture. Isn't that great? Mariliths are awesome. That is from the Hydra adventure. That's in their Hydra lair. It's a Hydra / Naga, I think. Guardian Naga. Crazy Druid. I forget what his story is, but that's a fun one. I like look at that nutty picture. Cockatrice. Fiendish Cockatrice. Or not Fiendish, Fey Touch Cockatrice. Frost Giant Werewolf. Look at the tiny skull. That's a humanoid skull, so he's very big. The gold dragon, we saw that. Black dragon, adult black dragon. Oh, this is a young black dragon lair, level 8 version. Oni, I love that one. Oni's great. This is the bandit queen, bandit captain. She's awesome. Again, I love that. I love that picture. Druid, really angry druid with her angry monsters feeding a snake. I forget, we had 2 versions of this, and one was really gory, and we kind of changed up the gore a little bit. I like this one. This is the 20th level Tarrasque adventure, and it's like, how screwed are you when you face both a organic Tarrasque and a mecha Tarrasque? And we love like the fight or flight reflex kicking in on these 3. The original version of this had somebody, it was like a silhouette of a dude running, and it was like, you probably should run. I just like this one because of like how totally screwed you are. I love this one too. This is Sticky Toffee. This is the hag who has a candy shop. And I love her apron with the frills and with a little heart on the front. Cracks me up. This is Centipede Cultists. This is a popular one. We got a lot of playtests on Centipede Cultists. And I think it's because it's like such a straightforward D&D adventure. Fighting cultists. You can never go wrong fighting cultists. You never feel bad. You know, no matter how many cultists you kill, you never feel bad. Blue Dragon. Yeah, ancient blue dragon spellcaster who's hoarding magic items. I think when you fight her, eventually she's like hurling magic items at you that are exploding. I didn't see this one till yesterday. I saw it in drafts. This is the aboleth / kraken lair. So there's a giant kraken in a big piece of crystal with an aboleth around it. I just love that picture so much. I want to make that my background. Lamia. This is the World Eater. That is a spider-shaped iron golem with an archmage, with a lich riding around in it. So you don't see the lich, and then this is her laboratory, and that is like a black hole, kind of. It's like a sphere of annihilation. I love this one too. Jack Kaiser did this one. And this is the Arena of Blood. I don't know if this is from, I forget what it's called. The original name for it was Those Who Are About to Die. I don't know if it's still called that. Horned Codpiece, right out of here's the Vampire Cloud Giant. I dig that one. And the Rakshasa. This is the last one. And it's just so awesome. Isn't that one great? Oh, God. And boy, like trying to figure out his hand is so much fun because Rakshasa hands go the other way. And you're like, I know there's something wrong. And you're like, is it wrong in the right way for a Rakshasa? Cracks me up. But yeah, it's such a great picture. So those are all the pieces. There's 20. I think we said there's 25 pieces of original art. I don't know if, cover art. Hang on. Art, start, final art maps, art, cover art. I think there's 2. Back cover. No one's seen this one yet. Look at that. This is the Cloud Giant, the Vampire Cloud Giant castle that is drawing the blood out of villagers nearby. So you can see these little tendrils of blood. They're being exsanguinated. Blood's flowing up from them into the castle. So I thought that's a pretty good, pretty touching, and pretty awesome piece of art from Jack Kaiser. That's going to be the back cover. It's going to be the back cover, and it's probably going to be the cover of the art book. So, yeah. So I think that's everything on Fantastic Lairs. If you guys have any other questions about it, I will consider that topic closed. Yeah, so 5th edition. So this kind of ties into the hard parts of 5e and like what works and what doesn't, what needs to be worked on still, and future, and oh my God, 6e. And there's been a lot of interesting stuff on Twitter talking about this topic. And one of them is that Jeremy Crawford mentioned the fact that one of the things they did in Tasha's is tried to address some of the problematic nature of attributes and races in D&D. And the idea of like orcs are dumb and they're dumb and big and strong, and elves are smart and beautiful, and it's very sort of like, it tastes weird now, right? It's bad. Like, yeah, I get it. They're not the same as like human race and the way we treat it. They're species. Yeah, there's all kinds of like nature talk. But that's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about sentient beings who are being typecast and stereotyped based on physical attributes. And that does not work these days, right? So in Tasha's, they started to address it by saying you have flexible racial attributes. You can pick any, you can pick any race and you can move the attributes around, which I think is fantastic. And I love it. And I already started doing it for all my games. I've been house ruling that now since my last run. So my Avernus game and both of my Eberron games allowed for flexible attribute points. And there was a lot of criticism that said, like, that's it, right? Like, there's so many problems and that's it. And so I don't know if they touched on, I wanted to look at it because I don't remember. Did they talk about it at all other than you have flexible races? Did they mention the fact that it's problematic or anything like that? And I don't think they did. I don't recall them doing it. Like, I like what so they call it customizing your origin. So they've stopped using the term race in here, although they still say it's your race, but they refer to it as origin now, which I think is probably smart. The question is, like, are they going to change it in the core books, and how do you do that? We're going to bookmark that topic for a second. Do they talk about alignment at all? Right. So we already know that alignment is open, but they don't have sort of the other house rule, which I've heard WotC designers say, but which is like all sentient races. It says a question about demons and devils, right? But generally speaking, I think they said humanoids can be of any alignment, right? That you can have good goblins and you can have good kobolds and you get bad kobolds and you can have, good drow and bad drow. And that they're not all, like, if you look at the alignments that they have in the monster manual for different humanoid races, can they switch up? And then it brings up questions like, what about gnolls? Like, the origin of gnolls is really different than the origin of, like, lizard folk, right? Lizard folk have families and they are born, but gnolls are like hyenas that ate, abyssal meat and became what they are. So, are they really demons and fiendish, or are they really humanoids? I think Crawford mentioned, somebody mentioned, either Crawford or Dan Dillon said, they actually screwed up the gnolls are considered humanoid, and they said they probably should have been fiends. Given their like, demonic origin, they probably should have been, probably shouldn't have been humanoids. And I kind of agree with that. It depends on the kind of gnoll you have, right? But then I think in Eberron, I think you can have gnolls that are actually like real. They were born, right? They have families and stuff. How do I turn off this thing? I'm going to remove from Chrome for the time being. There we go. Oh, God. I got to remove all this stuff. Remove from Chrome. I have too many plugins that are adding stuff. D&D Beyond and Foundry and everything else. So, so Dragon here says, in my setting, orcs have a demonic origin. So that's fine, right? Don't get me wrong. And I think everybody kind of agrees with this. Whatever you do in your home game is up to you, right? That nobody's getting on to anybody else's case about their home game. It's when one promotes their home game as like, this is the way, right? Then that can be trouble. And you got to ask yourself, like, how you want it to be portrayed in your world. But then there's also how Wizards portrays it. And some of it's bad. Like, I'm getting where people, so anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So there were complaints on Twitter saying Tasha's didn't go far enough. And they're right. And then there was a response. Why can't I get rid of the search bar? There was a response from Jeremy Crawford did an interview where he said, this is not the end of something. This is the beginning of something. It's going to be years before we fully address this. And we're starting it. And that got a lot of pushback of like, why is it taking years? And I'm kind of sympathetic on Wizards side, where it's like, they're a company, man. Like, it takes them time to move. And like, they don't just put stuff out, right? And first of all, they don't put out a lot of books, period. So do we really expect that they're going to solve this problem in a matter of months? 2 months? I don't think so. The other part that bothers me is like, why is Wizards the one responsible for the community on this? Why are we giving them that authority, right? Like Deuce, and so I know that if you look at this, is talk about people who are putting their money where their mouth is, putting their energy where their mouth is. is Ancestries and Culture. This book right here by Arconic Press. And they were the ones, adamantine bestseller, and it's only been out since August. August it came out. August, September, October, November. 4 months it's been out. Not even really 4 months. And it's an adamantine bestseller, right? Holy cow. And they put their money where I bought this and it's great. 70 pages long and has all kinds of customization options for how to handle ancestry and culture in your D&D game. And it plugs right into 5e. Bingo. And they didn't do it on the guild, which I also think is smart because you don't need to. Adamantine means it has sold 5,000 copies. It means that it is their best-selling ranking you can get on drive-thru. And I'm proud of the fact that Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master is there too. I don't know if the Lazy DM Workbook is. But Return is also an adamantine bestseller. But it took longer to get there. I'll tell you that. It's a Mithro. Lazy DM Workbook is a Mithro bestseller, which means it sold 2,000 copies or 1,000 copies or something like that. So yeah. They put their money where their mouth is. They also are the one that posted the tweet that kind of pushed Wizards, saying it wasn't far enough. And I'm like, I mean, you could push them. You could also just promote your own product, which is clearly selling, right? Like you're handling it, right? Like you're taking care of it. And this is my point. Like we cannot expect that Wizards is always going to do the right thing, right? And we shouldn't, if we're banking our hobby on the fact of what Wizards does, we're screwing up because Wizards is a company. They're driven by money. They are a corporation. They do not have feelings. They do not care about things. They don't hate things. They don't love things. They are a company. A company does not have personality, right? Individuals do. And we know, Jeremy Crawford and Dan Dillon are great people. So, yeah, Draga here says, I don't rely on WotC for anything. You shouldn't rely on WotC for anything. I don't rely on them. I'm always curious, and I love their stuff, and I buy it all, and I run it, and I get mad about stuff that I don't like, and I'm happy about stuff that I do like, but I don't count on them. They're not the hobby, right? This is ours. The 5e is ours, and I'm happy that they made an OGL. Although even the arguments about whether or not you need an OGL are really sound. But we can do what we want with it. So that matters. So Sinistar says, "Where's the backlash stemming from? I don't understand." And I warn you, any dicks in my chat are going to get banned. So don't be a dick. But I'll give you an example. The Goblin, right? So here's an example where they have neutral evil, right? So that means every goblin is neutral evil. There's none of them that obey the law. There's none of them that ever act altruistically. If you're in a forest and run into a goblin, never will they come and say, "I know you're starving to death. Here's a hamburger," right? They'll never help you. All goblins, right? And remember, goblins here are not fey creatures. They're not creatures of mythology. They have an origin. They have children and they have societies and everything. They are, they're not mythical, right? Mythical creatures, you could argue, have certain ways that they always are because that the mythology drove them that way. And you could also argue about where the myth came from. That's not what we're talking about here. You read their description. Goblins are small, black-hearted humanoids that lair into spoiled dungeons and other dismal settings. Individually weak, they gather in large numbers to torment other creatures. Every one of them, every goblin is a small, black-hearted humanoid, right? Give me a break. Everyone. So that's where that idea of the goblin is, you could say, is it a race? Is it a species? It's a species, whatever. But it's clearly a humanoid with a 10 intelligence. And it's saying every one of them are bad. And it's not, people get hung up on but goblins we're not referring to goblins as a metaphor for a specific race in our real world. We're saying that kind of, how do you say it? That kind of talk sounds a lot like, our racist grandmother who's like, they're all like that, right? It's so stereotyped. And that type of language is stereotyped. It's one thing when you're talking about pit fiends, right? It's something else when you're talking about goblins and goblinoids, right? Malicious glee. So every one of these you read and you're like, all of them, right? If you just add the word all of them, you can realize how broken this idea is, right? If you go to, orc, right? And just, this is aggressive. Every orc is just pissed off all the time. All of them, right? or look, oh my God, it does make me like, I read it and I'm like, I'd be embarrassed if I wrote this. Orcs are savage humanoids with stooped postures, piggish faces, and prominent teeth that resemble tusks. They gather in tribes that satisfy their bloodlust by slaying any humanoids that stand against. All of them. Every one of them. Right? Give me a break. So when I think about the arguments that have been happening on Twitter about this is what kind of interests me. That's where it's showing its age, right? So the interesting thing is mechanically, I was talking to my good friend Chris. I don't know if Chris is here in chat today, but he's an awesome dude. Chris and I have been playing D&D together for like 15 years, and very smart D&D dude. I think about things he has said all the time. He brought up an example in my mind that his voice was in my head when Tasha's came out, and I saw the new character or class features. And I remember him talking about what it was like when, is everybody being cool in chat? Warn me if anybody's not being cool in chat, by the way. I can't keep my eye on it all the time. Yeah, I think everybody's being cool. So we're talking about 5th edition. And one thing I say about 5th is like, boy, I'll tell you, more so I've played 2nd, 3.5, 4th, 5th, Pathfinder, and a bunch of other systems. And 5th edition, probably some of it's me. I'm becoming like more, I'm fine with what I've got than I am like, oh, I love new things. But 5th edition just like, I don't have any house rules that I need. I had some house rules. I'm not going to have any, I don't think, because it doesn't need them. It runs fine, right? Like, I mean, I've got the hard parts and I've got little 1-page guidelines, but the fact that I can write like a 1-page guideline, there are things I wish it had and there are things I wish it didn't have. None of those are getting in the way of me enjoying 5th. And it's also like a default RPG for me. Like, I'm happy with it. I don't feel like I need to play another system, and I haven't found any system that I like so much more that I'm willing to put 5th edition aside. I love the Cypher system. I love Numenera. I've got a shelf full of Numenera stuff up there. I love it. It's got stuff that I definitely like better than 5th, but not enough to break away from 5th. 5th just plays fine, right? And I'm happy with it. Mechanically, when I think about the things that really don't hold up well, it's that stuff. It's the idea that all orcs are a bunch of brutish, savages who are filled with bloodlust, right? It's that all goblins are a bunch of thieving bastards, right? It's that stuff doesn't play well anymore. And when I think about what I don't want to make a prediction. So people in the chat about it, we talk about. I say this all the time. Sorry for repeating myself a lot. I repeat myself a lot. Experts don't know what the hell they're talking about. Don't listen to them. And if you consider me an expert, then don't listen to me by default. But even if I'm a layman, don't listen to me either. Get lots of opinions and make your own judgments. And so I don't know what they're going to do with 6, but it wouldn't surprise me. I'll say things that wouldn't surprise me and things that would surprise me. It would not surprise me, and I kind of hope that they rewrite the monster manual. And there's 2 things I would like them to do with it. 1, fix that crap, right? Rewrite the descriptions of monsters. And it's fine to say orcs of Grumsh, right? Like, orcs of Grumsh can be a bunch of bloodthirsty assholes, right? Perfect. Not all orcs. And there could be orcs of Timora who are not a bunch of jerks. So, Sinistar says, I'm questioning the lazy DM method. Oh, don't listen to me. Yes, damn right. You should question the lazy DM method. If you're not questioning the method, you're not following the book. Because I believe I have a whole chapter devoted to that in the Lazy Dungeon Master Workbook called, where is it? Developing Your Own Style, the last chapter, chapter 29. And this chapter says, we've walked many paths to this book and have explored many ideas, but each of us still at the start of our own personal journey. As a GM, we all develop our own individual styles, blah, 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 blah. Whatever style of play, the concept Lazy Dungeon resonates with you, blah, 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 blah. Make your own style. Use the book, build your own style. Don't listen to it. I change my mind all the time. Crawford has indicated and demonstrated in recent books, alignment is for individuals, not races. Yes, I think the monster manual needs to show that. Why doesn't Wizards just put something like that at the end of all their products? Put something like choose your own. I think they kind of do. I mean, they don't say it quite the same way, but mine's more casually written than theirs. I don't know. I don't think fifth edition. I think actually fifth edition's problem is it is trying to be all things to all people. Problem for a book that's been outselling and where they've doubled the amount of people playing D&D since the freaking 80s. And that's my point. Like, it clearly works. And my friend Chris, who we both like nitpick at it. And he's like, yeah, well, it's the easiest to teach, or it's very easy to teach and it's very easy to keep playing. And my friends and I have been playing it weekly for 6 years and we don't see any sign of stopping. So, I think fifth edition is really strong. I think the thing that is hurting it is this stuff. And I would not be surprised. So there was two things. I mentioned it. I would love them to redo the monster manual. I don't know if they have to go back to the DMG or not. I haven't heard anybody that's shown me anything in the DMG that is really problematic. Maybe there's something. If anybody knows of anything and that's a real problem, let me know. I would love them to rewrite the problematic stuff. I'd really like them to rethink high CR monsters and the amount of damage they do. They are weak, and I feel like you really have to beef them up. They need to. They have some big ass spreadsheet that they use to figure out monster power. They need to fix that spreadsheet and make high CR monsters way more dangerous. Pit fiends should be doing twice as much damage as they do. Almost all the monsters above CR10 should be doing like more than twice the amount of damage that they do. They're just not threatening for high level players. So mechanically, I'd like to see that, but I think more importantly, they need to fix the other one. And the nice thing is they could do that and still be 5th edition, right? It's not even 5.5. It's like, no, you can play with either monster manual. They both work, right? One is not better than the other. It's sort of like Essentials with 4th. Like, yeah, the old one worked. You can use the old or the new. Pick which one. The only difference is, I think, and I would probably start using the new one, right? But I don't think, like, there's not a compatibility problem. And you don't have to even call it a new version. It's still D&D. It's just, hey, we did a reprint of the monster manual, and it's got this new stuff in it. I would love them to do that. Do I have anything else to say about that? I don't think so. I missed a bunch of I'm not going to talk about racist biology and all that. It's, I get you, but I just feel the ongoing story of D&D is based rules often changes with each edition, but monsters are still stuck in their core concepts. They've changed the concepts of monsters a lot, though. If you look at some of the monsters that they have in there, they've definitely changed them. Some for the better, some not. There's a lot of misogyny that's still wired into a lot of monsters, and I think that's kind of a bummer. I watched your YouTube video about Notion, and the software is amazing, but but it took forever to figure out how to spell Zettelkasten and figure out what you were talking about. Ignore that, man. That's just where I keep my notes. That has nothing to do with D&D, so don't worry about that. If you want to, no one wants to hear me talk about that. Zettelkasten is just a way of organizing notes where you network thoughts together. I thought it was kind of a cool way to keep notes together in Notion. I'm only doing that for stuff like my show notes. It's not for the D&D stuff, so don't worry about Zettelkasten for doing D&D. It's not that interesting. Google it. Monsters know what they mean is doing far more useful than alignments. Yeah, correct. And it'd be actually interesting if they included, like, I know people would love to have a little tactics section in there. I think I always do double the damage that high CR monsters do. Yeah, if you double the amount, it's a clue. Like double the amount of damage. Take a look at the damage and figure out how close it is. And then figure you double it. Do you prefer Kobold Press's method for monsters? I do, because they do more damage. They are overpowered. Kobold Press monsters are overpowered for, I actually know why. If you're curious about why, I can tell you. So there are, if you look at the Dungeon Master Guide rules for building monsters, that is actually, I talked to Crawford about this. I think when I had him on the show, I think we talked about this. I'm not giving away any secret sauce. I'm almost sure. And so when you're a third-party publisher that's making a 5th edition monster, you're going to use the guidelines that are in the Dungeon Master's Guide. If you, however, Wizards has a different, I think it's a spreadsheet. I think I've heard that they have a big-ass spreadsheet with all kinds of math in it. And it calculates monsters with much more detail than the guidelines in the DMG, which is rougher. And it turns out the extra detail increases the challenge ratings of monsters based on their capabilities, which means if you want a monster at a certain challenge rating, you have to turn other things down when you give them another feature. More so with the internal spreadsheet than if you're using the external stuff on the Dungeon Master's Guide, which means monsters built with the Dungeon Master's Guide rules are going to be harder than the ones that are built with their internal sheet. I'd argue that their internal sheet needs some work, because I think it overweights some of the capabilities that they're giving, and that's why you've got craziness like the If you look at a lot of the Mordenkainen monsters are so underpowered. And it's because they added like one feature and that lowered, if they wanted to keep the monster at the same CR, they had to lower another dial in order to turn another dial up or turn a feature on. And I think the features are overweighted. So I think they need to redo that. And the problem is like, you're not going to redo Mordenkainen's monsters. You know, they're not going to do another Mordenkainen, but boy, they're terrible. Some of them are terrible. So yeah, it means when you look at monsters, like the two groups that I've been looking at recently and running in my games are Kobold Press monsters and monsters from Monty Cook Games, who put out Beasts of Flesh and Steel and Arcana of the Ancients, and both of those have monsters in there, and they hit hard. They're good. They're good and they're powerful, and they do a lot of damage. They scare the hell out of people. So I recommend it. So what else? I'm missing other questions. If you have a question I haven't answered, state it again. When do you prefer Kobold Press? Yes. Read interesting criticism. DMJ is written for people familiar with D&D, largely returning at a fourth. I don't know. A lot of people, the DMG doesn't get a lot of love. I think it's great, but I think it's a better reference than it is like an instruction book, and that's fine because people buy Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master. 4E had the same problem. First monster manual was by far the worst. It got better. Yeah, the difference was it wasn't just power. There was some power there. There was like monsters were inflated on hit points and did too little damage, but they also like, boy, you want to see an example of like how they screwed it up. Look at the original 4th edition Dracolich and then the one that came out in the Monster Vault. And the 4th edition Dracolich was a terrible monster. It stunned all the time. It was terrible. So that was more than just kind of tuning damage up and down. I really feel like they could just tune the damage up on a lot of monsters. So we'll see. Do you feel your dissatisfaction with many of the 5e official modules may be exacerbated by some of the systems used, such as lack of support for certain type of content? I feel like I've talked about this in Discord. I don't know what's causing the problem, but I do think it's a bit of a too many cooks situation. They freelance a lot of the material in recent adventures and have done so since what's it called? Dragon Heist, since Waterdeep Dragon Heist. So it's like five adventures that they've gone back through. And I feel like when you have a bunch of authors writing different sections, the thing gets kind of disjointed. And I think they sort of paste it together at the end and patch it together, and it doesn't really work. That's Ryan, right? Ryan from 2C Gaming. Your name escaped my head for a minute. Sorry. And I suck with names. And so I feel like it's more there. I'm not blaming anything. I don't know. My argument is I just want them to do better with published adventures. I don't think that they're getting the same attention that the other books probably have, which is probably okay. But I feel like it was even better when they were outsourcing this stuff. Like I felt that like they outsourced Ghosts of Saltmarsh to Kobold Press, and I thought that was a fine book. I don't know. I mean, like I'm gonna start digging into Rime of the Frostmaiden, and I've already got problems. And I'm running Dragon of Icespire, or I'm running Descent in Avernus, and I got problems, right? And yeah. I wish they didn't have these problems, and I feel like they're solvable problems. I feel like these are things that they could have done differently and would have been better. So I think their production process is a bit of a mess when it comes to adventures, and I think part of it is they outsource a lot and then they bring it in. I've heard that they change things last minute. There's a lot of things going on. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, and we talk all the time. I don't know why you're asking me. We could, you know what I think. Do you think Wizards will update how traps work? I don't know. I find it difficult to implement in game. Thieves' tools, detecting traps, etc. Yeah, there might be more there. I think I had a article about this called "The Flow of Trap Detection." Flow of trap detection. There it is. And it was really about like what's the work process. You're the best, Ryan. By the way, I'm not giving you shit. I'm totally happy to answer your questions. Mechanical flow of trap detection. Like, how does it actually work, right? And I wrote. Wow, this is a long article. So here's an article I wrote about how that kind of works and like what's the flow. And yeah, they probably could do a better job of describing that. Maybe that's a good uncovered secret is like discussing the workflow of traps. And you can also throw in here the unknown rule about dark vision and passive perception, which is if you are in no light with dark vision, that means you are at disadvantage on your passive perception. You're -5 on passive perception if you don't have light. So you really do want to have light. Esong says, it didn't know Ghost of Saltmarsh was outsourced. Yes, it was given to Kobold Press. Kobold Press put together that book. Yeah, and it was great, right? I think Kobold Press does great work. I love them. What else? What else we got to talk about? I think I covered that to death. Perception, investigation, avoidance. Yeah, kind of the workflow. That's probably worth. I might. That's not a bad idea. For a potential uncovered secret, I'm putting that on my to-do list. A trap detection, uncovered secret. Sort of a clarification, right? Like I don't think you're the only one. Whoops. Who's had kind of trouble with that idea. Esongbird says, question, looking for a wish list for the holidays. You showed so much love for the holidays, so much love on Kobold Press that I'm wondering if anyone has a suggestion for one product from them I should look into. Yes. Whoa, what number one product? You will probably get, if you want a book that you could read for the rest of your life, the Midgard Worldbook. This guy. It is a, it's huge and it's got so much stuff in it. Hang on. I'll give you a little preview. If I can find it. Actually, I can, Midgard Worldbook. It is a 466-page source book about Midgard. It's got, and it was written by a ton of people, including Dan Dillon, Richard Green, great designers, John Sawatsky, obviously Wolfgang Bauer did the primary development. It is available for 5th edition, and it is just, I haven't gotten through it. And they say it's on sale for $18. Yeah, this is not a bad one to have physically, though. Let me show you my physical one. I have the simulated leather collector's edition of it, and it's a meaty tome. This is big book. Beautiful maps, big poster maps, gods, pantheons. This is like, when everybody talks about, like, I like making my own world, I'm going to piss a bunch of people off with this. I'm like, how, you're going to make a world. Great. You're not going to make this. And you can get it for $18. Like, so I love this idea. I love just falling away into a world. And if you have your own world, steal from this. Go buy it and steal. So if I had to get just one book, I'd probably get that one because I think it also will last. Like, they say it's for 5th edition, but I don't know if there's any mechanics in here. It's all places and adventure seeds and ideas, and like it goes on and on. It's fantastic. So I don't see anything. Like, I don't see any mechanics in here. There's no, because they moved all of their monsters are in their other books, and all of their player options are in other books. So it's just a great big book of world. And the idea of like buying a world that's been in development as long as it has, and Wolfgang Bauer's a genius in this. God, you're getting a good deal. Double ribbon. Does it have a double ribbon? It does. Triple ribbon. It's got 3 ribbons because it's so big. Get that. You want one book? Get that. Love it. I mean, it's just a monster. It's a monster book, and it's got like cool, great stuff. And he's been working on it forever, so it's got such detail in it. Yeah, love it. What else? Songbird says, yeah, the Monster Codex. Yeah, so he's got 3 monster books now, right? He's got Tome of Beasts 1, Tome of Beasts 2, and the Creature Codex. And they're all great. And, sometimes you just grab a book and look through. So what I do is, like, I don't, I did this for my Eberron game. I knew I wanted weird-ass mutant monsters running around in the Mournland. So I just grabbed Tome of Beasts 2 and went through Tome of Beasts 2 and picked out some. You don't have to go through all of them. You just pick a couple. So that works. What else? Where's my checkbox? Go back to here. Random factions for game inspiration. This is a short thing that I'll give. I don't know. And again, you got questions, bring them up. Happy to talk about anything. So this is something where I was thinking about my wife's game, and I knew. So I showed the map of the game that I'm running with my wife, right? And I knew, like, she's gonna go down here, and there's gonna be some encounters with, like, shadows and mechanical spiders and everything like this. This should be a podcast. There is a podcast, as a matter of fact, and this will be on it. I think, maybe. Why not, right? So if you go to Podbean, and you go to Sly Flourish. Sly Flourish is Lazy DM Rep. There you go. Subscribe. It's sort of a stealth launch. I don't advertise this. But there is a podcast here, and it has this is now up to it's all the Lazy DM Prep ones, and this thing's on here too. So there you go. There's a podcast. It's unedited. Sorry, you'll hear a lot of typing. You'll hear a lot of and han and me clicking around. Sorry, I'm one dude. I don't generate the maps. Those are Dyson logos. Go to dysonlogos.com for your maps. dysonlogos.blog for maps. So yeah, so I was playing I was thinking about my wife's game, and I was like, man, I don't know where to go. Like, she's gonna have these gates that could take her anywhere in Eberron, and I became sort of paralyzed with, man, I'm gonna have to sit down with the Eberron book and figure out, like, a good place to go. And I was like, wait a minute, why don't I just roll? And I went to my I have an article. I have 2 1D100 Eberron factions, right? And I pulled up this PDF. Here's the link. I got a cat at the door. He's very upset not being able to come in here. And I just rolled, and I got Aramai. Andwar, right? And I was like, oh, it could go to Andwar. And it occurred to me, just like when you're stuck for something to do, when you don't have an idea and you're like, you need 3 options or whatever, grab whatever random lists you can find that makes sense and roll on them, because boy, you can get some really good ideas from it. And that idea of, like, randomness to kick you out of a rut really felt good to me. It felt powerful. And I've talked about it before, and I've written about it before. And then but sometimes it takes another shot. Oh yeah, I should roll. And that's where, like, again, the Dungeon Master's Guide gets a lot of crap, but the Dungeon Master's Guide is filled with lots of tables you can roll on to get ideas for your D&D game. If you're ever stuck, roll on that. And then, 2 that I think are really helpful, having a random list of factions for your game world, whether it's your own, whether it's Eberron, Forgotten Realms. Here's the Eberron one, but I also have a Forgotten Realms one. Is it factions? 1D100 Forgotten Realms factions. So I have another one here. I'll paste this one too. And you ever need an idea about, like, what an adventure or something that they find or some kind of cool thing or just anything, roll on this list. Roll a couple of times. You don't like the answer? Roll a couple of times, and then just sort of let your mind sort of wander with the results of that. And I think there is, in the world of D&D, I think there's nothing quite so powerful as a randomly picked things that are then, I'm not saying this right at all. A human brain powered by randomness is super powerful, right? It's super powerful. And I think I wrote about this. And what's interesting is, like, if you want to get nerdy, machine learning, that's how machine learning stuff works, right? It mixes randomness with direction and recognizes the fact that randomness has this big play in the world. And so a lot of the algorithms that power artificial intelligence stuff have elements of randomness in there because it works better than if it doesn't. It does a thing called overfitting. And overfitting is essentially like falling into a rut, right? If all you ever do are watch the Lord of the Rings movies, then your Lord of the Rings... then all of your adventures are going to be like Lord of the Rings, right? And that's overfitting, right? And everyone's going to know it because everyone else watched Lord of the Rings. But if you can say, like, well, I like Lord of the Rings ideas, And I want to, but I'm also going to add these other ideas and then roll randomly for it. You start to add it and then it widens out and then you're not overfitting. So I think there's something compared there. Open the door so the cat can come in. Come on, kitty. I don't know what you want to do. You just want the door open. Cat just wants the door open. Randomness. So I have an article. Random Creativity in Dungeons & Dragons is an article I wrote a while ago, a couple years ago. I use Empty Black as an example, who randomly generates the titles to his products. And, he doesn't just randomly generate them and run them. He randomly generates a bunch and he looks through them and he gets ideas and he pieces them together and he cuts stuff out and he fixes them. And that's that value, that curated randomness. I guess that's really what I'm talking about, is curated randomness, right? Figuring out how to mix random nature with your own brain to come up with really creative solutions. And it worked for me. So it's just something I thought was really, a thing to be reinforced because it worked really help. What else? Any other topics that people want to talk about today? I've got more things, of course. I'll look into Storm King's Thunder swing set park. I like the idea of a sandbox. Boy, Storm King's Thunder is a sandbox. It is a great big sandbox. Curated randomness. Yeah, I wrote some Storm King's Thunder articles. I like it. It's a fine adventure. It's so wide. It's so big and so wide and so many places that have too little detail. It's actually almost a better source book than it is an adventure. But it's fine. And I ran it for 2 groups and we had a great time with both. So Rime of the Frostmaiden. I'm starting to think about getting my session 0 notes together for Rime of the Frostmaiden. I read the first chapters and stuff like that, and I need to kind of dig in further. I'm still a month or more away from starting to run it, so I've got time, but I figure I might as well get some homework done early. And so I've started to think about what are the big the big points of this campaign. What are the main, when you think about the main theme, and I'm already starting to get my head around a theme, and the theme I want to run is the adventures we have. The idea that Icewind Dale is cut off and the characters are the heroes that we have in hand, not the ones we need. No one from the Sword Coast is coming here to save us. No, the rest of the world doesn't care what's happening up here in the north. We're a small bunch of towns barely surviving anyway. And now this thing has happened. And now we don't know. We might go extinct. But we have the heroes we have today. And you're solving small problems, right? The general thought of it is the heroes we have solving small problems, right? And it's not, it's there's a murderer loose in 10 towns. Or, we're lost all our ale. So it's small quests, small, local hero kind of stuff. And I like that theme. This isn't the... Rise of Tiamat, right? This isn't the, all the lords of all the demon princes of the abyss are coming out and you need to save the world. This isn't everyone who dies, their soul is getting destroyed by a giant machine down in Chult. This is small problems, right? And I dig that. And then Secrets Under the Ice, I've started a Rime of the Frostmaiden Notion notebook, and I'm starting to get my session 0 notes. And it looks like I already kind of started putting things together, with the 6 truths, sun hasn't risen and it's the 6 truths. I don't know if I'll have 6, it might be just 3. Secrets lie buried under the ice. I don't think these need to be capitalized. So I'm just starting to get my head around it. To see what kind of campaign I want to run and make sure that it fits the themes that are actually in the adventure. Because what's the point of running an adventure if you're not going to try to stick with the themes too much? So I don't know if I'm going to. Truths of Icewind. Is it Icewind Dale? Yeah. What's that whole area called? The Frozen North? So I'm just starting to get my notes together. I'm going to put this together into a nice one-page campaign handout. I was trying to think of, I don't know if I'm going to succeed in this, although I'll probably have to do it once I see what the characters choose. But as they start to pick options from Tasha's, I'd like to try to connect the Tasha options to, to Icewind Dale. Like, why are they getting those things? So if they pick any of the psionic stuff, what is, something is causing. Some of those secrets under the ice are changing people's minds physically, so that now psychic, they're sort of connected to psychic energy. Villains, I don't have all the villains down yet, and the other trick, and I've asked people about this, is who are the, who's the group patron? I want to offer like 3 different potential group patrons. I've started talking about this in Discord. I wish I paid more attention and started writing them down, because I thought there were some good ideas about which NPCs would make for a good group patron to begin with. Because I want the character, it's just easier for me if the characters are already together, like they've all been, together. I think that would be, it's easier when there's a reason why they're all together to begin with. Have you had a chance to look through the 40-page Spelljammer 5e conversion using dark matter? I have not. Someone homebrewed and posted under our Unearthed Arcana. That's cool. I have not seen it though, and I'm not as much of a Spelljammer guy. So, races, I'm probably going to limit the races to everything in the player's handbook plus the Goliath and the Furbolg. I think we're just going to stick with that. I don't know if people need to have more than that. I don't think, are there any house rules? I don't think so. We will be playing with, the only house rule is that, so I guess which books, right? And we'll be playing with the player's handbook, Tasha's, and Xanathar's. I don't think I'm going to do the core. I don't think you need to do a core +1 if you're including those. So I'm basically allowing all of it, right? Like, I don't think there's any, I'm being pretty open, about, pretty open on what they can choose. So any other character option limitations? I don't think so. I think I'll just let them do what they want, and they can even use the custom options for it. Right now, I don't know if I've got any other house rules. I think I've already talked about group patrons. Safety tools. All my groups have been playing together for a long time now. I think the main thing to say is that we will be, the game will be PG-13. And I might mention some things about lines and veils. Generally, like sex stuff is all veiled. No lines on any kind of forced, any kind of sexual assault or rape or anything like that is all off the table. and if anybody else has other things, then they can send me a private message, and I'm happy to address it as we go. Generally, so I guess like thematically, is there a movie that this kind of fits where I could be like, you can generally expect it's going to be like X. Of course, The Thing comes to mind, but The Thing is pretty hardcore. Although there's not, I mean, are there other movies of people kind of stuck up in the ice? I don't know. So I'll write up a thing about that, but generally, Alive. So 30 Days of Night is so gory. I just watched it. Hey, it's a terrible movie. And it's not really fitting the theme of this. It's not fitting the theme of this adventure as I see it, really. Probably The Thing. I don't know. The Thing, I'm sure, is rated R, right? I don't know. I can't find it. I'm pretty sure it's rated R. The Shining's not so bad, Yeah, it's R. But I'll probably still stick to PG-13. So yeah, and I'll ask if you have any, it's going to be about sort of isolation, I mean, you'll see the themes of it. So the question is, if any of the aspects of the themes are troublesome, let me know. And a lot of times it's like, I'll describe it sort of casually to everybody to get an idea if they think it's okay. But I don't see this, like, if you read the adventure isn't nearly as filled with horror as you would think, given that The Thing was like a big motivator. Frozen isolation monsters, new mysterious powers. Those are good. Those are good theories. So yeah, I need one more faction. So I got a lot of work to do, obviously, but I'm just starting to get my thoughts together on this. What else? Anything else interesting to talk about? Early thoughts on Frostmaiden. Any other questions about Frostmaiden? Cool stuff that happened in my games. Anything? I mean, I talk about my games all the time. I will talk about like the when things click, because it's and the problem is I don't have great examples of this, but what I've noticed is that there are times where the improvisation, when you're open to improvisation during your game, and when you're handing stuff to you're gifting, I forget they call it gifting or something like that. Giving, it's sort of the idea that you're setting up the other people for a situation, and boy, when it works, it feels really good, and it's fun, and it's funny, and like sometimes it's at the expense of a character, but not at the expense of a player. And like, you really, like, inspiration isn't sort of enough of a gift to give somebody, given that they put themselves in these positions where they kind of get hosed. And it's sort of like the when you go to Troll Skull Manor and you look in the toilet, and a hand made out of a black pudding reaches up and grabs you and pulls you down in the toilet, and your feet are kicking out of the top of the toilet. Meanwhile, other things are coming out of the woodwork, because I did a big haunted house for Troll Skull, and that was fun. That was like The Shining. When they went into Troll Skull Manor the first time, that one I ran like The Shining, and it was awesome. And the players were into it, right? Like, they didn't feel they got screwed. They even though their characters are now at a totally disadvantaged position, they thought it was funny, and they worked with it, and other players loved it. And there's something about sort of that improvisational click that just feels great when it works out. And I don't know, you just want to kind of constantly be setting things up. I'll give it, sort of another thought on this. I was talking to my wife yesterday, and we were closing in on the end of our Eberron game, and I asked her, like, as we close in on the end, what are some of the things that you want to have happen in this game, right? And she said that she thought it would be really great if every character sort of had a good opportunity to shine before the end of the game. Like, they've had opportunities to shine, but do they, can you set things up? And so the question I had, we started talking about it. It was like, sure, you want your monk to have lots of opportunities to race around a area and do things. You want your cleric, your cleric to have a big opportunity to like blast down undead and do cleric stuff and heal, save everybody. You want your rogue to have really good like thievy, backstabby, disarmy sort of stuff. So looking at all the big lore, right? The wizard should really be able to dig into arcane lore. The artificer should be able to work with like really cool machinery. So, like, what are all those opportunities? And the question I had was like, is it too much if you kind of design encounters that way? If you kind of say like, okay, I want to make an encounter that's going to make this character shine, and you build it that way, is that too structured? And instead, it's actually better when you build sort of open situations and you give yourself a lot of tools to improvise, so that when the situation occurs, you can suddenly shine the spotlight on it and say, look. And I think it feels better. Instead of designing specific encounters to highlight the capabilities of specific characters, you want to create a lot of different kinds of encounters with a lot of different circumstances and situations, and a lot of the hooks and a lot of room in them, so that when the player makes the character do something cool, you can then shine the spotlight on them at the moment, be able to watch them do their shit that they're doing here. That's really cool, right? So I think that's tricky. I'm still thinking about that. That will probably end up being an article. But we were talking about that, and I was kind of fascinated by that idea. And I think that's where the value of like step one of return is look at the characters, right? Study the characters. And you do that not to build things for them specifically, although many times you'll build some secrets or whatever, but it's also to have them in the back of your mind, so that when you're designing the rest of it, you kind of know like, oh, this is going to be a fun circumstance for an artificer to deal with. So I kind of dig that. Sinistar says, do you use a laptop when DMing a session? I do now. I don't know what it's going to be like when I go back to the physical table again. So this is, this should have been number one, is like, what's it like? Oh, final topic. So this is a good final topic. Although, boy, we've been talking almost 2 hours. So probably time to go in the next 10 minutes. But so we're not going to get to Dwarven Forge stuff. But I do want to talk about playing online. And so a very kind person gifted me a license for Foundry. Foundry, I believe, I want to do a poll on Twitter maybe about popularity of DM tools. It feels like it's the third most popular VTT right now. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if like Astral or somebody else is higher. It feels like it's probably third, next to Roll20 and next to Fantasy Grounds. I have a friend who loves it, who fell in love with Foundry. So I was like, Foundry, I'll take a look at it. I was pretty sure it's not for me, but I was like, I should take a look at it. So they gifted me there was a sale on it for Black Friday. It probably still is a Black Friday sale. Give me a sec to clear my. So, is there still a sale? I know there was. Yeah, so it's a 25% discount for Black Friday. So you get it for $38. And it's a one-time license for $38. And it is a full VTT. And it has a lot of features, a lot of integrations. It has a lot of great it has lots and lots and lots of features. So because I was gifted the license, I spent, I think on Thursday, it was Thursday morning, Thanksgiving morning. I spent probably a good piece of the morning playing around with it. And I built some campaigns, I built some scenes, and I put maps and tokens and everything and tried it. And I played with the lighting effects, and I integrated it with D&D Beyond, and I did a whole bunch of stuff. And it looks very cool, and I know people who love it, so I am not disparaging at all. I still don't think it's for me. And I saw somebody on Reddit did a post. I can probably find it. So I only know it because I linked to it in another post. So they posted a pretty popular Reddit post of top 10 assets. I got 1,000 upvotes on this. And they mentioned that they're top programs to use for running online. These are top 10 assets for DMing virtual D&D. And I was like, that's great. More people need this. And I think people should have different approaches. And so people can find the approach they like. And they picked Foundry as their number one thing. And Foundry has lots of different things. You saw, like, when I had a plugin issue because I had the Foundry VTT plugin for integrating with D&D Beyond. And it's a very powerful tool. My friend was showing me about lighting effects, and you can do like the dynamic lighting where you draw the lines around all the walls in a map, and then you move your token around and the map shows. So it's really, when you think of, like, if you want to have like a how do you say, like a highly visual approach to your D&D game, visual and audio, you see music and sound effects and special effects and lighting effects. And then I saw some videos that people are putting out where they put like sparks around candlelight. So you can do theater of the mind style where you give it like a side view image of a tavern and the lights are flashing and the sparks are going and you hear the tavern music and you hear it. And you can kind of put this on as a background. So it's a very high special effects platform for D&D games, like really big. If you want to have a lot, if you're pouring a lot into your game to sort of really hit all of the senses that you can, short of like taste and touch and smell. I guess it's just two of the senses. But you really want to build like a theatrical version of your D&D game. Then this is like a great platform for being able to do that. It takes a lot of work to make stuff on it. And so I dug it, and I think it's powerful, and I'm not done with it. I still want to play with it. I've got it installed on my machine here. I've got it installed on my machine up there. But one of the things that I find with tools like this, I found this with Roll20. I didn't play a lot with Fantasy Grounds, but a little bit with Fantasy Grounds and a little bit with Foundry in my time there, is like, it wants to be all things. It wants to be fully integrated with everything. So you want to have your characters in there. You want your tokens in there. You want your monsters in there. You want your adventures in there. You want your maps in there. You want your notes in there. You want every aspect of your game that you've got needs to be in one platform. And that means the platform has to support all of those things. And that means the platform is complicated to use because you got to figure all that stuff out. And the approach that I've been taking, and that was why I wrote not a rebuttal exactly with only 26 upvotes. The rebuttal that I wrote was the approach that I've been using over the past few years, or past few months, which is I use Discord for audio, video, and text chat and sharing images, right? I use Owlbear Rodeo when I need to have a grid. I love Owlbear Rodeo. And I just wrote a big article about Owlbear Rodeo because it's a free tool. It's just maps and tokens. Very straightforward. No integration with any other kind of aspects, but really good. I use D&D Beyond, and my players all use it. I think I have one player who doesn't, but everybody else uses it. And then Avray to connect D&D Beyond to Discord. And even Avray is kind of optional. I don't know that I need Avray anymore. The big question is, do you need to see other people's die rolls? And it's like, I don't see them at the table when we're playing. I don't look over and go, what did you roll? Right? They just roll. And the guy got 10. And there's a little bit of like maybe the guy next door. But no, I don't play with anybody who cheats. I'm pretty sure. I could track their rolls. I've cheated, but I don't think they've cheated. And so the question is, like, you could just play with whatever, right? Like, I think that like D&D Beyond, the nice thing about all of the tools that I'm using here is they're all optional, right? Like, I mean, you need some way to do audio chat, right? So Discord works really well for that. So Discord is kind of the hub. Owlbear Rodeo, I use it occasionally, but rarely, because I usually run Theater of the Mind, and I can run Theater of the Mind in Discord without any problem. D&D Beyond, that's great, but you can also just play with a pen and paper and piece of paper and use your books. A lot of people use D&D Beyond, though, anyway. And then Avray's nice if you want to connect it. I've got some players who do it. I don't really do it anymore. I will use the die roller in there, but really I just need a die roller. And it's interesting to me that I was really excited about Avray early on and then have pulled way back. And now I tend not to use it. And I use Beyond and then roll physical dice. I've got dice right here on my table where I roll. So yeah, so that's been really interesting. And kind of the I've talked to a lot of people who I'll pull up Owlbear Rodeo just because people. So here's the neat thing, right? I don't want a password. And Oh, how do you get rid of this? No, go away. Isn't there a way to get rid of this? I thought there was like a full screen mode. Where is my full screen mode? So you can kind of see, you know. That was when they were fighting the this is when they were fighting the Frost Giant Werewolf. And you can see like they have like 70 out of 72 AC 15, right? They wrote that in. That's not integrated from anywhere. They just thought, the players thought, hey, wouldn't it be a good idea if we had our hit points on here so we could all see kind of what's going on and make things a little bit faster. This, I think, was just a token. But really nice. And a lot of people that I've talked to that have used Owlbear Rodeo, they're like, man, this is so nice because it's just so fast. And like you saw it, like loading it up was super fast. You know, here's another map I used, right? You know, it was super fast to like make tokens and to drop tokens. It's got a bunch of default tokens in here. So you have like all different kinds of class tokens that you can use if you just want a quick one. So I love Owlbear Rodeo so much. I just sent them some money today. They have a donation thing. How does Fog of War work? Good question. I will show you because I just learned how to do this. So Fog of War, what you start with, you click the plus, which is the add fog. You pick the pen, the fog polygon tool. I don't know why it's a pen. And you draw a polygon. So you go point, 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 whoops, point, and then connect it. And now it's fogged, right? And you can see like this is what it looks like to the player. Then when you want to reveal an area, you do the paintbrush and the minus, and you draw a little area around what you want to see. You say like you want to see this side of the boat maybe, right? And you can see that that's what they see on their side. So you know, you want to see the rest of the monsters. You just cut away the fog to show them what they can see. I'll show you a better example. So here's a dungeon map. So here's one I was experimenting with. So first thing we'll do is, can you just delete the, is there a way, remove, let's try this. Yeah, so now I've removed all the fog, and now I'm going to create a new one, and I go boom, boom, boom. It's kind of a bummer. I can't quite get around that. I can't get around my toolbar. That's a bug. Let me try this again. Let's move the map. There we go. So bang, 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 bang. So now I've got the fog on the whole map, right? And let's say they're just at level 1. So we go over to level 1 and you say like, we're going to grab our rogue and our paladin. They're coming down the stairs, right? So we would say that what they can see is, subtract that they're here, right? And then we can check it with this one. That shows them what they can see. Like you come up to a door, I check it for traps. There's no traps. Okay, we walk in. So then you say, okay, you walk in. And then they can see, let me do minus again. And we go here, and they can see pretty much everything around here up to this door, right? And then you check it again, right? And then they say, I want to move over to that door, and I check the door. Paladin's like, I'll back you up. Paladin goes up here. It's not great because I'm on this like super tall area. And we go back there and minus, and he can see that. And then she opens the door, Rogue opens the door, and she can see that. And that way you can expose the map. So everybody can control every token. The DM is the only one that has control over Fog of War tools, but anybody that you invite can move anybody else's token, which gets a little, you got to trust your players not to screw around. You know, just like, don't screw around. But there's no real permissions for things. And that means that you could just send a link, right? So like I'm not going to do it because there's 50 of you, but I can send you the link to this map and you guys could screw with it, right? And you guys could move tokens around and do stuff. So it's just super, super straightforward. You know, it's really, it's really a straightforward tool. for drawing maps. And I'm probably going to use it more than I have been, even for exploration, because now I know how to do the Fog of War with it. So I love Owlbear Rodeo. And that's it. It's maps and tokens, right? It's nothing else. It's got a die roller. Like you can go in here and roll a die if you want to roll, with people, but you don't have to. And I don't know that matters too much. I don't think I'd bother. Yeah. So I'm digging the Owlbear Rodeo. It is fun. Yeah, so I'm still fascinated. And then the big question is, like, when are we getting back together again? Right? Like, that's a tough question. Like, I mean, we all have to get the vaccines. Can you play music? There's good question. I think so. It also even though you don't have a password or account, it still remembers who you were and what you had based on, I think it's the local resources. I heard somebody in my Discord said that actually all this stuff is stored locally, not on their servers, which I thought was very interesting. And it uses some kind of protocol. But yes, there is you can share. So I can click start sharing, and I can, so what I would do, I guess, is I would make a new window, probably can I drag this out? And I go to like tabletop audio, and I'd play my like defiled temple music. So I'd have this defiled temple music, and then I could go into sharing. I don't know if can you hear my defiled temple music? And then I could go into start sharing, and I'd say application window, and I'd do the tabletop audio window. Whoops. I clicked the wrong thing. Start sharing, share audio, application window, Chrome, tabletop audio, share. No audio found. I don't know. I guess there's a way to do that. I have to find out. It could be that I'm also on, I'm broadcasting, and that's weird too. Love it. Love that tool a lot. I think it's really great. Getting back together is an interesting question. My local group went to Discord, but then we've used COVID as an opportunity to invite friends from other states. I've had that question. So my Wednesday group has been down a member for a while, and it pretty much since the start of COVID. And I'm thinking that I need to bring in at least one more person. And I've been contemplating like best way to kind of find, recruit somebody to, I got friends and I got friends of friends, but is there other ways that I could bring someone into the group that would really enjoy it? And then the question is like, should I probably want to pick someone local, because we do want to get back in person, so I think I'd like that group, my home Wednesday group. I think that one I want to fight hard to actually come back in person, which means I don't want to invite people who couldn't drive here and get to my house on a Wednesday night, every week, right? And that's tricky. So my Sunday group, I have a feeling my Sunday group is going to stay remote permanently. I think we're done. I love the local game shop, but I think we're not going back because, boy, my players were driving 40 minutes to get there, and I think that's just going to be hard to do. We'll have to see, but I think it's going to be probably spring or summer before we do that. So that's real tricky. So this has gone on now for 2 hours and 8 minutes, and I think it is time to call it a day. I don't know. Is there any topic we haven't talked about that you guys really want to hear about? Now's the time. Otherwise, I think it's time for lunch. Last call. I think we covered every topic. Before you go, thank you for your help with Strong Starts a few weeks ago. Struggling, but I'm working more. Great. I'm glad. Hints towards the next Sly Flourish book. Yeah. Let's just say that the uncovered secrets and the adventure generators, that's something I'm going to be continuing to work hard on. And I think that they could do with some work to Yeah, I'm probably gonna do something with that. That's the beginning of something, not the end of something, as we'll say. I think that's yeah. I would love to do a big ass adventure, but action oriented monsters as an idea. I actually have a thought about mine. Okay, we'll talk about this. Then we're gonna go. This will be the last topic. I've been toying with an idea. I don't know if I like where it's at yet. And I don't know if it's going to work. And part of the reason is like, I don't even use it. And if I don't use it, I don't know that it's really that useful. Because like, who the hell else will use it if I don't? But I look at it and I'm like, I feel like this is useful. So, Ryan, I have a question for you. I will chat with you in Discord later about my next thing and ideas. Got some worries. So I have a thing called the monster generator. This was an uncovered secret that I've been working on. My general theory for this idea was, what if we just made monsters completely differently than the 5th edition method, but that was still 5th edition, compatible. So like, what if you just built monsters totally differently, but they still played in 5e? In other words, your players can still use players' handbooks and Xanathars and Tashas and everything else, and they still play normally. All the rest of the rules play normally, but the way monsters are generated is completely differently. And it probably fits a more 13th age / 4e style for monster building than the monster manual does. And then the idea was, then could you do it where you kind of build your monsters on the fly? So if you think about like how monsters work in Cypher system, where you just have a DC, could you build a whole monster from just like a single number? So the idea is, what if you just had a level, right? You sort of have two variables to build a monster, a level and the monster's size or type. And the level is the equivalent of a character level. So an 8th level monster is the equivalent of an 8th level character. That way, all of your encounter building stuff is much easier to deal with, right? It's just straightforward. So CR is kind of a weird one because no one knows what CR actually is. Like, CR doesn't represent anything. Level does. Level represents the level of a character. So if you say like you have so in this case, and that means that level is going to be significantly lower than challenge rating, right? So an ogre, for example, isn't going to be a CR2, but an ogre is probably a level 4, maybe even level 5 or 6. If you think about like how big an ogre is, skeletons are like level 1s, because remember, there's 1 per. So like, you don't have sort of lower level things. I mean, you could, like a sturge is probably lower than a first level. But generally speaking, you have like levels. So the idea is like you pick your level first. That tells you a bunch of stats. And then some of them, so like, you have your sort of ACDC, what's the ACDC of that monster? How many hit points does it have? Proficiency, this needs to change to be something else. Probably its bonus. And that's its general trained bonus, right? So if it's something it's proficient in, what's its bonus? And that way you don't have to worry about like what its stat is that it uses for that. You only worry about the bonus. You do worry about the stats when it comes to saving throws though. But this bonus is also its trained saving throw. So whenever it has a trained effect, that bonus is what's used for its trained effect. It has a total damage output, but it also has that broken down into a number of attacks and the amount of damage per attack. So again, you have your 5th level ogre. It has 40 hit points. Well, ogre is a special case. So let's pick a different one. Say an orc, right? You have your orc of Grumsh, and it's level 3. So your level 3 orc has 12 AC, 24 hit points. Its bonus is +4. It does 1 attack for 12 damage. Feels about right for an orc, right? That feels about right. Now, the types have normal, elite, and legendary, right? And your normal monsters are like your orcs. They're like humanoids, right? Your elites are double strength. So they are like, an ogre is really kind of a double strength creature. And a legendary is like a dragon. A legendary means that it's the equivalent of a group, right? It usually counts as a quad strength. Although I think I might make it I don't know. Quad strength is probably good, but it means you get some really beefy monsters later on. So your ogre, for example, you might say your ogre is a 4th level monster. And since it's a double strength, right? It's because it's so big, it's a double strength monster. So instead of 32 hit points, it has 64 hit points. And instead of doing 1 attack for 16 damage, it does 2 attacks for 16 damage. Or you could have 1 attack for 32 damage if you wanted to be a real bastard about it. So when you make an elite, it doubles their hit points and it doubles their damage. And you can decide like how to break that stuff up. And then you have so then there's a section here on adjusting statistics and dealing with like, proficiency. So you say like, it's proficiency based on what makes sense. Untrained scores, which is skill checks or saving throws that aren't trained, are somewhere between -2 and +4, depending on what you do. And you kind of have to gauge that. So there's not really a table for that. You have to kind of pick it. And we assume that all monsters have an initiative bonus at +2. Just make that easy. But you can make that variable too. Like your zombies or whatever. Senses, languages, and other things, just, because this is an abbreviated stat block, make that up based on the story. Like, make it fit the story. Movement and range, they move 30 feet. Elites and legendaries, double the listed hit points, inflict double damage. Elites have 1 use of legendary resistance per day, letting them turn a failed saving throw into a success. Legendary, and then elites, or legendary monsters, have 4 times the hit points, 4 times the damage, and they have 3 uses of legendary resistance. Real quick way to make a legendary monster. So, and then somebody asked, like, how do you determine how many monsters? So it's a little easier that you would assume that on the deadly scale, you would have 1 monster per character of their level. If they're elites, they count as 2. If they're legendaries, they count as 4. If they're at their level, that's right on the edge of hard to deadly. Monsters that are, if you want more monsters, if they're half the level, you can have twice the monsters. Same if they are, you could have four monsters if they're quarter level. So it scales linearly all the way up. I don't know if that works. I think that's pretty close. And then the idea is you have these monster traits, and these are sort of plug and play traits. I put a bunch down here, but I have a feeling there would be more. And my idea for traits is that you don't worry about how they change the difficulty. You just pick the traits that make sense for the monster, and more powerful monsters are likely to have more traits. So it's still based on the story. You're not min-maxing your monsters by picking deadly traits. You're only giving a monster trait when it makes sense. So like your basilisk has petrification. Your whites have death touch. And various immunities and resistances, some creatures have them, but they don't change the difficulty, because a lot of times your expectation is that higher level monsters are going to have them anyway, because the story makes sense. So I made some example monsters, and what I really like about, so here's the ogre, right? I said a level 3 elite. So 11, AC 11, 48 hit points, does +4 to hit for 24 points of damage. It hits hard, right? That's a hard hitting monster for, level 3. Skeletal veteran, level 5 undead, 40 hit points, AC 13, longsword, 2 attacks, +5, 10 damage. Feels right. And again, you can see like this plays right in. Now I put stats in here for saving throws, and I just made them up. Right. And the idea is I made them up based on the what makes sense. But I think that this stat block, it's like really straightforward. It's much smaller than a normal stat block, but I think it's enough to run it and play with it. Right. I made some hard ones. Level 9 straight vampire, level 13 vampire lord. That's elite. I made an elite level 18 death knight to make a really powerful one. I made a level 20 lich, elite lich. 320 hit points, AC 20, bunch of crazy stats, unholy aura. So a lot of times legendaries have an aura that does damage to everybody around them all the time. In this case, an unholy aura that does 20 damage to anybody that starts within 30 feet of it, or anybody that begins near it, using 13th age style. Death rays, so this is more of your 4th edition style lich, where it can fire 4 death rays, +12 to hit, 40 damage on each one, right? That's 160 points of damage it can do. Bang, 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 bang. 4 different targets. That's dangerous, but it's 20th level. Disintegrate, 1 target, 162 points of damage on a single shot, +12 to hit. If it hits you with that, you're hit for 162 points of damage. And I gave it a spellcaster ability, which says it can it casts 1 spell per level up to 9th level. +12 to spell attack, DC 20. You get to pick it. Just pick what makes sense. Meteor Swarm, sure, it can do a Meteor Swarm, right? And then DC is 20 on that. And then I said, let's go crazy. Let's make a level 23 legendary demon, Orcus, right? So what is Orcus like? AC 22, 796 hit points. Immune to a bunch of stuff. Unholy aura. Anybody that begins near it takes 47 points of necrotic damage just for starting near Orcus. But he's Orcus. 4 attacks with his wand of Orcus. He does 20 bludgeoning damage and 74 necrotic damage and death touch on a wand of Orcus attack, right? Because he's Orcus. A call of death. He can pick 2 targets. They each have to make DC 22 con saves. They take 188 necrotic damage on a failure. that's now we're talking, right? Right, Ryan, you probably, that's hopefully 2C gaming level of deadly. And look at that stat block, right? It's a tiny little block, but oh boy, I bet you I can shake up a 20th level group with one of those guys. So again, I'm toying with the idea. It's sort of like, is it an easier, faster way to make monsters that make more sense? I don't know. But then I get back to, I'll just reskin or modify the existing monsters. Like, I don't know if I trust it enough to use it. And if I don't trust it enough to use it myself, is that Call of Death? Yeah, Call of Death will screw up your day. Something I've been toying with. I think it's close. I think there's something here, but I don't know yet. So, yeah. All right. Why'd that come up? Somebody asked that. Action-oriented monsters. So my thing is like these monsters are not tactical. They don't have a lot of different things that they do. I'm about the story. I want monsters to be easy to run and let the story be interesting, right? So, yeah, I think there are other groups. I mean, MCDM. I expect you'll see, MCDM is going to continue to support the idea of action-oriented monsters. And I think there are people they're DMs who want more crunchy monsters with more stuff that they do. I don't think I'm one of them. I think I want easier to run monsters that are threatening and scare people, but they got to be easy because I'm busy and I'm not that smart. My brain is not built to run a lot of tactical stuff when I've got players, knocking things around. So anyway, all right. I want to thank everybody for hanging out in the chat today. 2 hours and 20 minutes, but boy, it was fun. I love doing this stuff. And I will be on again tomorrow morning. And tomorrow morning, we will talk about my Eberron game and where things are going there. Where are they? Where did they get to? I don't remember. I'll have to remember where they are by tomorrow. So thank you all for hanging out. Always appreciate it. Good times. And I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great day and get out there and play some D&D.